Today's mindful moment. Welcome to the deep dive. We take stacks and stacks of articles or research or a book, whatever you've been meaning to get to, and we extract the good stuff for you. And today, we're diving into Dixie's Daughters, the United Daughters of the Confederacy and the Preservation of Confederate Culture by Karen L. Cox. This book is really fascinating. It's kind of like a time machine. It takes us right into the heart of this movement that really kind of reshaped the narrative of the South after the Civil War.
What I think is so fascinating about this is that we're talking about a group of women who, in a society that was really trying to limit their influence, managed to have a huge impact. Like they shaped the way an entire nation remembers this really pivotal event in its history.
And we're talking about the UDC.
Yeah, the United Daughters of the Confederacy, the UDC.
Okay.
And Cox uses their own words, meeting minutes, letters, speeches, publications, all kinds of stuff to show us how they did it.
Okay, so let's set the stage a little bit. The Civil War ends in 1865. The South is in ruins. How does this lost cause movement that we hear so much about actually emerge from that wreckage?
Well, just imagine a society trying to deal with this defeat and just clinging to its identity. The Lost Cause movement, I think, really emerges as a way for white Southerners to kind of reframe the narrative of what happened, right? It's not about accepting defeat. It's about kind of transforming it into this noble, even heroic defense of a way of life.
And women, specifically groups like the Ladies Memorial Associations, the LMAs, they're right at the center of this whole thing.
Absolutely. They really take on this crucial role of preserving the honor of their men, right? Of attending to the Confederate dead. And in doing so, they carve out this public role for themselves in a society that really traditionally confined them to the home.
So these seemingly traditional activities, like decorating graves and organizing these Memorial Day things, they become something more.
Yeah, they become much more. They become these incredibly powerful tools for shaping memory, for influencing public opinion.
Okay, so that leads us to the birth of the UDC in 1894. Now, it's not just a coincidence that this national organization emerges?
Well, absolutely not. It's a really strategic move to unite all these different Confederate women's groups under this one single banner, right, to amplify their influence. And there are two women, Caroline Meriwether Goodlett and Anna Davenport Raines, who are really credited with sparking the UDC's creation.
And they had a clear vision for what the UDC should be doing, right? They outlined 5 main objectives for the group.
Yeah.
There's the memorial aspect, the historical focus.
But it's even deeper than that. They're also emphasizing benevolent work, like caring for veterans and widows. And then there's these educational and social objectives, which really highlight their long-term vision for kind of shaping Southern society.
No, it's not just about remembering the past. It's about using that past to shape the future.
Exactly. And that's where things get really interesting.
Because we often think of monuments when we think about the Confederacy. And the UDC really took that to, a whole new level, didn't they?
Oh, they were ambitious, yeah. The Jefferson Davis Monument in Richmond, the monument to Confederate soldiers at Arlington National Cemetery, the one at Shiloh Battlefield. These were huge undertakings.
And expensive, right. How did they fund all these projects?
Well, think about Janet Randolph, one of the early UDC leaders. She gave this impassioned plea to all the chapters, urging them to contribute. She argued that these monuments were absolutely essential for vindicating the Confederate men and their cause. And it worked. They rallied their members, they held fundraisers, they even lobbied governments for support.
So these monument unveilings, then, they become major public events.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Huge events. They were these elaborate ceremonies that were designed to evoke all these powerful emotions, really instill this reverence for the Confederacy. I think it's this brilliant kind of blend of public spectacle and historical, revisionism.
But it doesn't stop there. Right. Cox talks about the UDC engaging in what she calls Confederate progressivism, which seems kind of counterintuitive, right?
It's a weird term.
Yeah.
But I think it really captures the way they kind of blended this lost cause ideology with this push for social and educational reform.
So what did that look like in practice?
Well, take their benevolent work, for example. They established soldiers' homes, widows' homes, but their focus was very specific, caring for Confederate veterans and their families.
So targeted benevolence.
Exactly. It's this way of providing aid while simultaneously reinforcing the narrative of Confederate sacrifice and heroism, And Cox highlights the frustration of Florence Barlow, the editor of the Lost Cause magazine.
What would she have said about?
Well, she was furious with Southern men for not adequately supporting these initiatives, you know? She's like, you guys give all these grand speeches about honoring Confederate women, but she says they're failing to put their money where their mouth is. It reveals this kind of fascinating tension within the movement.
Okay, so the UDC is building monuments, they're caring for veterans, but they're also deeply involved in education. And not just providing education, but actually shaping the curriculum.
Right. They really believed in promoting what they called impartial history, which was, of course, their very particular version of history, right?
Right.
They wanted to downplay the role of slavery in the Civil War and present the antebellum South in this very romantic, almost nostalgic light.
So they set up textbook committees.
Hmm.
They lobbied to influence what was being taught in Southern schools.
Exactly. They understood that controlling the narrative meant controlling the future, right? And they were not afraid to use their influence to achieve that goal.
Which brings us to a pretty explosive incident, the Christine Boyson controversy.
Oh, yeah. This is where the UDC's determination to control the narrative really comes into focus.
Remind us what happened there.
So Christine Boyson, a student at Columbia University, wins a UDC essay prize. But her essay is critical of Robert E. Lee, calls him a traitor. The UDC is outraged, of course.
Yeah.
They withdraw the scholarship from Columbia. Boyson becomes this target of their ire.
It's like they thought they could create this historical echo chamber where only their interpretation of the past was allowed to exist.
And the Boyson incident really shatters that illusion. It exposes the limits of their control. And it sparks this huge debate about who gets to tell history and how.
Yeah.
It makes you realize how powerful these historical narratives are and how much is at stake in shaping those narratives.
Yeah, it's a powerful story.
Absolutely. The UDC's story is a real stark reminder that history is not just about facts and dates. It's about interpretation, it's about perspective, it's about power.
They're trying to control the narrative through monuments, through these textbooks. But Cox also brings up this idea of Confederate motherhood, which takes their influence even deeper, I think.
This is really where their focus on shaping young minds becomes so apparent. This idea of Confederate motherhood basically placed the responsibility for transmitting Confederate ideals onto women. Like it was this sacred duty.
So it's not just teaching history, it's like instilling values, shaping identity almost.
Exactly. And so they create this organization, the Children of the Confederacy. You know the Comet de Penobis. It was a way to directly influence these young people. And the UDC chapters were really instrumental in organizing these groups, these spaces where kids could be immersed in this lost cause ideology.
It's like a Confederate youth group, kind of, with the UDC acting as these mentors.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it. And Cox talks about UDC members making these classroom visits, organizing events for Lee's birthday, Davis's birthday. They'd even put portraits of these figures like right up on the classroom walls.
Wow.
You know, it was this constant reinforcement of the lost cause narrative.
And they didn't shy away from using these more overt methods of indoctrination either. Like they had these Confederate catechisms,
Oh, yeah.
these question and answer sessions that were meant to just like drill these specific viewpoints into children's minds.
It's kind of chilling to read some of the examples Cox provides in the book. Like, one question asks, what causes led to the war between the states from 1861 to 1865?
Okay.
And the answer, the disregard on the part of the states of the North for the rights of the Southern or slave-holding states.
So it totally erases like slavery as this central cause of the war.
Completely. And then there's this other one, how were the slaves treated?
Okay.
And the answer they were teaching kids was, with great kindness and care in nearly all cases, a cruel master being rare.
Oh, wow.
It's a complete distortion of history. You know, it's meant to just like sanitize the brutality of slavery and justify the Confederacy's actions.
So this catechism, combined with all the other ways the UDC was influencing education, like it created this powerful narrative that shaped the way generations of Southerners understood the Civil War.
Yeah, absolutely.
It makes you wonder, though, how they reconciled this like fervent defense of the Confederacy with this idea of national reconciliation. It seems like such a contradiction.
It is really complex. And the UDC's views on reconciliation really kind of evolved over time. They believed that true reconciliation could only happen after the South's actions were, understood and accepted by the North.
So not about apologizing or admitting wrongdoing. It was about getting the North to see things their way.
Exactly. And they saw their work as essential to achieving that goal. Building monuments, caring for veterans, promoting impartial history, all of it was aimed at vindicating the Confederacy and then paving the way for reconciliation on their terms.
Cox talks about this 1912 UDC convention in Washington, D.C. as this, like, pivotal moment in this debate. President Taft even addresses the convention, emphasizing sectional unity, but also acknowledging Southern patriotism.
Right. It's a very delicate balancing act. Taft's trying to appeal to both sides.
Yeah.
Recognizing the South's loyalty, but also pushing for a unified nation.
And then there's the UDC's involvement in the peace movement, which further complicates this whole thing.
This is where things get really interesting, I think. On one hand, they're advocating for peaceful resolution of conflict, which, aligns with their beliefs about the horrors of war. But on the other hand, they're still fiercely defending the Confederacy, this cause that was, born out of war.
It's like you're trying to have it both ways, right?
Yeah, it's this really interesting kind of tension there. Condemning war in general, but celebrating the Confederacy's war in particular.
Yeah.
Their participation in things like the National Peace Congress and the work of Virginia Clay Clopton, who is this UDC member deeply involved in peace advocacy, really highlight that tension.
Okay, so then World War I comes along, and this throws a whole other wrench into things. How does the UDC, an organization so rooted in Confederate identity, respond to this new conflict?
Well, they find a way to kind of reconcile those dual loyalties. They offer their services up to President Wilson, supporting the U.S. war effort.
Yeah.
But they don't abandon their reverence for the Confederacy.
It's a pretty remarkable display of adaptability.
Yeah, it really is. Cordelia Odenheimer, the president general at the time, really embodies this. She offers the UDC's support for all these war relief efforts, but at the same time, she's making sure that the organization continues to do its work, preserving Confederate memory.
It's a testament to their ability to navigate these complex and oftentimes contradictory historical currents. I mean, they were masters of shaping these narratives.
And their legacy really continues to resonate today, even as the controversy surrounding Confederate symbols, they intensify.
Cox points to the flag controversy in South Carolina in the late 20th century as just one example of how the UDC's efforts to shape this historical memory have had this really lasting impact.
And June Murray Wells, who was the UDC president general at the time, vehemently defended the Confederate flag, arguing that it was a symbol of Southern heritage, not hate.
It's just a reminder that the past is never truly past. It continues to shape our present in these really profound ways.
Yeah, the UDC story is a really good reminder that we need to be more critical consumers of history. We need to question the narratives we're presented with and seek out multiple perspectives.
It's just crazy to think about how this organization, this group of women operating in a society that really tried to limit their influence, managed to have such a big impact on how we remember the Civil War.
Yeah, and their story brings up so many questions, about the nature of history, about who gets to tell it, and how these narratives, shape our understanding of the past and even our present.
For you, what stands out as the most significant thing about the UDC?
I think for me, it's really their commitment to their cause. Like, they really, truly believed in this lost cause narrative. And they were willing to go to extraordinary lengths to, defend and promote it. They built monuments, they shaped education, they even influenced politics, all to make sure that their version of history was the one that stuck.
It really is a testament to their determination. But it's also a cautionary tale, don't you think?
Yeah.
About, historical revisionism.
Oh, absolutely. The UDC story really shows how important critical thinking is, We have to question the narratives that we're given and seek out, different perspectives. History is never simple, and it's rarely objective. It's shaped by the people who write it, and it's really up to us to engage with those narratives in a thoughtful way.
So as we kind of wrap up this deep dive into the UDC, what's, the one thing you really hope our listeners take away from this?
I hope they come away with a deeper understanding of how complex history is and the power of narratives. The UDC's story shows us that the past really isn't over. It still affects us today in ways that we might not realize. And by understanding how these narratives are made, we can be, more informed, more engaged, and better able to deal with the challenges that we're facing today.
That's a great point. Well, thanks for joining us for this deep dive into the UDC. We'll be back soon with another one, exploring history and culture and, all the things that make our world so fascinating.
Make sure to subscribe to The Deep Dive and share this episode with your friends. We're constantly exploring new and challenging ideas, things that make you question what you think you know.
And we've included a purchase link for the book in the show notes, just for you. Keep those minds sharp and never stop questioning. Until next time.